$737 a month. That's the average payment on a new car in America right now, according to one national auto lending report. Not for something exotic, for the normal car, the one sitting in every driveway on your street. And here's the part nobody says out loud. Kept up across a working life, that one completely normal number quietly costs you about $1 million. Not the car, the payment. And you didn't choose it. Nobody chooses it. You just did what everyone around you does, because that's what normal means. Today we're reading the receipt everyone signs and nobody reads. Here's the plan. 6-line items on this receipt. 1. The forever payment. How 68-month loans and rolled-over trade-ins turned a purchase into a permanent bill. 2. The real cost per mile, because the payment is only about half of what the car actually takes from you. 3. Depreciation. The invisible bill nobody ever sees leave. 4. The millionaire in the driveway. What that same 737 becomes if it gets invested instead. 5. The honest one. We'll run the status math, and we'll also admit the part of the car story that's actually true. And 6. Why cars are the #1 middle-class wealth leak in America. Then the escape. The practical opt-out, not the monk version. Let's open the receipt. First, let's be clear about something. This is not a you problem. You didn't wake up one morning and decide to hand a lender $9 grand a year. The system decided for you decades ago when dealerships stopped selling cars and started selling payments. Nobody across that desk asks, can you afford $48,000? And $48,000 is now the average new car price. They ask, can you do $700 a month? And stretched across enough months. Almost any price on earth sounds doable. Financing is the real product now. The car is just the delivery vehicle. That's how a $48,000 purchase started feeling like a normal Tuesday. So let's print the receipt. Average new car payment, $737 a month. Average used car payment, about $520. Average loan term, roughly 68 months. Call it 6 years of your life per car. True all-in cost of ownership, fuel, insurance, repairs, registration, roughly $12,000 a year, according to a National Auto Club study. And at the bottom, printed in red, the lifetime total. That payment, invested instead, is roughly $1 million by retirement. That's the lifetime price of normal. Every single line on this receipt feels reasonable on its own. That's the trick. Let's take them one at a time. Line item 1, the forever payment. A car loan used to be a chapter of your life. 3 years, maybe 4, then done, and you'd spend the next stretch driving a paid-off car while your money went somewhere useful. Now look at it. The average new car loan runs about 68 months, nearly 6 years. Plenty stretched to 7 because a longer term makes any sticker price fit the monthly budget. That is literally what the longer term is for. But here's where the chapter becomes a life sentence. Most people never actually finish the loan. Somewhere around year 3 or 4, right when the payments would finally start building real equity, the itch hits, or the ads hit, or the dealership calls with a great trade-in offer. And if you still owe more than the car is worth, which on a long loan you usually do, that gap doesn't disappear. It has a name, negative equity. And the dealership has a friendly solution for it. Roll it into the next loan. So the new loan starts underwater on day 1, quietly carrying a chunk of the old car inside it. You are, in the most literal sense, making payments on a vehicle that's already parked in someone else's driveway. Then 3 years later, it happens again. Run that loop from your 20s to your 60s and add it up honestly. The payment never ends. It just changes cars. $700 a month every month for a working life. Not because any single decision was crazy, but because every single step felt normal. The industry's word for this customer is serial, and they mean it warmly because you're the best customer they have. Nobody sat down and chose a 40-year car payment. They chose one reasonable monthly number over and over, and the numbers held hands behind their back. That's the forever payment, the foundation the rest of this receipt is built on. Line item 2, the real cost per mile, because the payment, heavy as it is only about half of what the car actually takes. Ask someone what their car costs, and they'll quote you the payment. Ask a National Auto Club study, and you get a very different answer. The true all-in cost of owning a new car in America runs roughly $12,000 a year. That's about $1,000 a month. Here's what hides underneath the payment. Insurance, which has been climbing hard and climbs hardest on the newest, most expensive cars because the insurer isn't covering your commute. They're covering a $48,000 asset. Fuel, week after week, forever. Maintenance and repairs, tires on a modern car can run $1,000 a set, and every added sensor, camera, and touchscreen is one more four-figure repair bill waiting patiently inside the dashboard. Then registration, taxes, fees, parking, tolls, the occasional ticket. None of that shows up in the number the dealer quoted, and most of it doesn't stop when the loan does. Now put that $1,000 a month next to a normal paycheck and say it plainly. For a huge share of households, the car is the second biggest expense in their entire life, right behind the roof over their head, for a machine that sits parked something like 95% of the time, full-time money for a part-time machine. And because the costs arrive as a dozen small separate bills, a tank here, a renewal there, a brake job in the spring, your brain never adds them into one number. $12,000 a year doesn't feel like $12,000 a year. It feels like Tuesday. That's not an accident either. Spread out is exactly how big numbers stay invisible. So from here forward, when we say the car, we don't mean 737. We mean about $1,000 a month all in. Line item 3, depreciation, the invisible bill. Here's the strangest charge on this entire receipt. The single biggest cost of a new car never shows up as a bill at all. No envelope, no auto-pay notification, no due date. It just happens, silently, while the car sits in your driveway looking expensive. A typical new car sheds around $20,000 of value in its first few years. And the slide is steepest right at the start, the moment it stops being new. You pay a chunk of it just driving home from the dealership. Think about what that actually means. If someone mailed you an invoice every month for $400 or $500 labeled the cost of your car getting older, you would be furious. You'd call someone. You'd cancel something. But because no bill ever arrives, the money just evaporates, and nobody mourns money they never saw leave. That's what makes depreciation the perfect fee. Real enough to pull 20 grand out of your net worth, invisible enough that you never once feel it happen. And notice carefully who eats it. Not the automaker. They were paid in full on day one, not the lender. They collect their 68 months either way. You eat it. The new car buyer absorbs the steepest stretch of the value curve as a gift to whoever buys the car secondhand later. Hold on to that sentence because in the escape at the end of this video, we're going to flip it. We're going to be the person standing on the other side of that trade, catching the discount instead of paying it. For now, just add the line to the receipt. $20,000 paid in full for the privilege of the new car smell. No invoice will be sent. None is needed. It was collected automatically. Line item 4, the one this episode is named after, the millionaire in the driveway. Let's run the 737 question honestly. Same person, same job, same paycheck, but instead of sending $737 a month to a lender, they send it into a boring, broad index fund earning roughly 7% a year. That's the historical long-run average, not a promise, not guaranteed. Markets drop, sometimes for years. But run the math conservatively across a 30-year working stretch, and that one monthly payment grows to roughly $900,000 to $1.1 million. Call it $1 million, rounded. Sit with that for a second. The average American car payment redirected is a millionaire. That's why we say the millionaire is already in the driveway. He's just parked out there in the shape of a depreciating sedan. The car payment is a millionaire driven off a cliff. Now, nobody is telling you to skip cars for 30 years. The escape at the end is far less monastic than that. This math exists for one reason, to show you the true price tag, because the real cost of the payment was never the payment. It's what the payment could have become. Economists call it opportunity cost. On a receipt, it just reads, everything else this money would have done. And here is the line to remember. The thesis of this whole series in one sentence. Nobody makes one $700,000 mistake. They make a $737 one, every month, forever. That's the design. Big mistakes trigger alarms. Normal-sized ones auto-pay. One more number before we move on. That same National Auto Lending report puts the average used car payment near $520. Even just the gap between new and used invested compounds into a couple $100,000 over a career. Hold that thought. It's the exact door the escape walks through. Line item 5, and it's time to be honest, because there's a version of this argument that's smug and wrong, and we're not doing that one. First, the part of the car story that's actually true. You almost certainly need a car. In most of America, the whole map was drawn on the assumption that you have one. The job, the groceries, the kids, the distances. A reliable car isn't vanity, it's infrastructure. Anyone who tells you to bike everywhere and feel superior has never missed a shift because the bus didn't come. So let's say it plainly. The trap was never owning a car. The trap is the premium. The extra few hundred a month between reliable transportation and new car theater. And what does that premium actually buy? Status, supposedly. So let's run the status math. Strangers don't notice your car. They're busy starring in their own movie, worrying about their own payment. Test it on yourself. Can you name what your coworkers drive? Most people can't get past 2. The people who do notice, the ones who genuinely clock the badge and the model year, notice for about a week. And here's the thing about them. They cannot pay your loan. Their glance costs them nothing and costs you $737 a month for 68 months. That is the single worst trade on this receipt. Real money, drained out of your real future, in exchange for approval that is imaginary, brief, or both. Meanwhile, the 4-year-old version of the very same car does the same commute, carries the same groceries, and plays the same music through the same speakers. So keep the car. Keep the reliability, the safety, the freedom. Those are real, and no one here is taking them from you. Just look hard at the slice of the payment that exists purely for an audience that was never actually watching. Line item 6. Why cars, specifically, are the #1 middle-class wealth leak. Not lattes. Not avocado toast. Cars. Stack up what we've counted. A payment near the top of the average household's bill list, a true cost around $12,000 a year, a $20,000 invisible depreciation bill, all wrapped inside a loan structure engineered to never end. No other normal expense combines that size with that repetition. The daily coffee is a rounding error next to this. The car is a 4-figure monthly current flowing straight out of the middle class on autopay for decades. And here's the mechanism that makes it the biggest leak of all. It is the largest expense that feels completely normal. Housing is bigger, but people fight about housing. They compare, they agonize, they downsize, they negotiate. The car payment just is. It sits in the budget like a law of physics. 68 months of debt doesn't even register as debt anymore. It registers as having a car. Picture the street you live on, a red financed stamp hanging over nearly every driveway. And because it's every driveway, not one of them looks strange. That is the entire trick this series is about. Normal is broke. Not because people are dumb, because the defaults were designed, and the car default is the single most expensive one most families ever accept. Here's the hopeful flip side. The household that fixes this one-line item, just this one, frees up more investable money than 100 small optimizations combined. So skip the guilt about the $4 coffee. That's a distraction dressed up as advice. The leak was never in your kitchen. It's parked outside, it's stamped financed, and closing it is worth more than every other money tip put together. So here's the escape. And notice it is not, never enjoy a car again. It's 3 moves. Move 1, buy the 3 to 4-year-old car, the one someone else already depreciated. Remember the $20,000 invisible bill from line item 3? In this trade, you're finally on the receiving end of it. Someone else paid the steepest years of the value curve. You buy the same car, most of its life left, modern safety, the early defects long since fixed, at a deep discount. And that National Auto Lending report says the average used car payment runs about $520 a month instead of $737. Same driveway, smaller leak. Move 2, drive it long past the loan. The magic was never the purchase. It's the years after the loan ends. Pay it off in year 3 or 4, then keep driving it for 5, 6, 8 more. Those are the no payment years. The exact years the forever payment loop deletes for everyone else by trading in right when equity finally shows up. Every month inside the no payment years, the old payment amount is just sitting there, freed. Which brings us to move 3, the one that changes the ending. Give the dead payment a job. The day the loan ends, redirect that same monthly amount, automatically the same week so your brain never gets a vote, into that boring, broad index fund from line item 4. You were already living without this money. Your budget won't feel a thing. Run the no payment years on repeat across a career, and you quietly rebuild a serious chunk of that million, while driving a perfectly good car the entire time. That's the whole escape. Not extreme, not monastic, just off script. So, what's your car payment? Be honest. Drop the number in the comments, no judgment. This series exists precisely because those numbers were engineered, not chosen. And remember, this is education, not financial advice, just the receipt, read out loud. Next time, we follow a $12 burrito that somehow costs $27 by the time it reaches your door, the convenience tax. It's a smaller leak than the car, and that's exactly why it's winning. I'll see you there.